Hello viewers. Well, back in June I made a video with some of my first impressions, just picking up the Nintendo Switch 2, and the video never went live at the time, and I thought we're sitting there, I'll put it live on the channel so you can see some of this, and then I'll come back with some of my thoughts on some of the games and more Switch details in the coming days and weeks. But let's take a look then. My first impressions of Nintendo Switch 2 as recorded back on release week back in June. Hello viewers, well the Nintendo Switch 2 was released a couple of weeks ago. I'm a bit late to the party in making a video on it, but at the same time I got myself a Switch because I do like to play a lot of the Nintendo games, and I was quite keen to see how it worked. Again, the evolution of the console. I had a Switch 1, moving up to a Switch 2, and the option to import a lot of my old games appealed to me and accelerate the performance as well as some of the new titles that are out. So I'll just give you some of my feedback based on my play so far. Certainly I think the look of the console is very nice. It's very sleek, very thin. I like the larger screen. The screen is very nice. I'll come back to screen performance separately. Everything is very nice about the console. It's very pleasant to look at. The magnetic, the way the Joy-Cons magnetically clip on the side was of concern to some. Not had any concerns about that. It locks on perfectly fine. I think it's quite practical. Just don't get your finger caught in there when you're doing it, no doubt. Otherwise there'll be some tears. Do use a screen protector if you have one. I haven't got mine on there yet, but I have purchased one to go on there, and I'd say it's always worth it. I have them on my phone. It's definitely worth having there. The screen itself is very nice. As I say, it's very sharp. Games look nice on it so far. I've seen the animation issues and the ghosting issues that's been highlighted on Digital Foundry. I can't say that having played on it so far it's been an issue for me in terms of gameplay. I think when I see a lot of gamers complaining about screens, and I think of, you know, Game Boy 1, Game Gear, Atari Lynx, we didn't sit here complaining about screens all day. We just played with the consoles. When the Sega Nomad came out, we were amazed to have Mega Drive games in our hand. The screens are terrible on those compared to today. I think we just reached a point with the JXD S7800B about 11 years ago, which had a great screen on it. And screens have improved, phones have improved. I think people are sometimes comparing £1,000 mobile phone screens to this as well. I've seen lots of different comparisons. As the screen goes, it's been pretty good for me so far. It's nice and playable compared to what I've experienced in the past. It's amazing. I think people do moan about so much these days. They want absolute perfection. I see people complaining it's not an OLED, but then they're complaining in the next breath that the system's too expensive. And what do you want? Do you want a £600 Switch, a £700 Switch? But then at the same time, maybe that should be made available. Maybe there should be an option where you purchase a separate screen, separate Joy-Cons for your purpose, that sort of thing. Because it takes me on to the Joy-Cons. Obviously they've got the mouse stuff. I've not needed to use the mouse stuff yet in any of the games I play. It's nice. But one of the big problems with the Joy-Cons is rubbish for 2D games. You go into the history and you play the 2D games, there's no D-pad on the system. It's designed around two people playing, but having 4 buttons there doesn't replace a D-pad. Useless. Useless for a single player wanting to play a 2D game. It's purely there as a gimmick for 2-player mode. So if you don't have 2 players and it's just a 1 player and you want to play a 2D game, it's not up to purpose. Waste of time for me. So in that sense, there's weaknesses for me elsewhere that are far more important than the screen itself, which so far in what I've played is pretty good. The ghosting itself is not perfect, but it's not terrible compared to a lot of games and screens I've played. So I guess one day there will be an OLED version, and then, you know, perhaps in 2-3 years, then all of those that feel they need it will buy it. I won't. I don't see that there's going to be enough improvement for me to warrant the expenditure of spending another £500 on a Switch 2 in a couple of years. And at the same time, I'd like to experience a lot of the Switch 2 games now while the technology is new and it's fresh, rather than waiting another couple of years for that. So in terms of the functionality of the system, It's got the chat feature, which I haven't managed to check out yet, but hopefully I will do soon. The onboard speakers are much better than they were before. Docking to the TV is very similar. The front end has had some revision. It's all very smooth, very polished in the way it's all put together, very functional. I like the online shop now has a wish list and recommended games and just little things. The wish list just being on the wish list in the past, you had to go into your profile and find it. Now it's just on the side menu. So that's what I'm getting at there, rather than it not being there. Just nice to have that. And then just having everything slightly bigger on the bigger screen is really nice. You know, I play a lot of Virtua Racing. Virtua Racing looks spectacular on this screen. Really nice and clear. No complaints there. Playing a bit of Final Fight. Again, I was just looking at the ghosting and seeing how it was, but can't really say I had a massive problem with it. Again, I've played on so many different screens over the last decades that it's just not a major issue. The Joy-Con not being, you know, good enough for this type of game is a bigger issue to me than the screen at the moment. I feel like people are picking up on the wrong things there. In terms of the games that have come out, we've had Mario Kart World Tour, which is fantastic. I've played it, I've enjoyed it, want to play it more, love the tracks, love the technology. Again, seeing Mario so polished, the work that's gone into it to just make a solid game. You know, it's not a game they've released that's full of bugs. Really nicely made and put together. You can just see the passion and the dedication that's gone into producing something like this. Lots of little design elements in there. Wonderful. Just a really great game. So Mario Kart A star. Great. What it does raise, one of the things though we don't have on the Switch is obviously lack of analog control, and it's a shame because I think analog would actually be the next step for Mario Kart in giving you even more control. I don't necessarily do all the jumping and the wall riding and the rail riding when I'm playing so much. I kind of feel like some of that detracts from the actual racing at times, but I can't complain. They've produced a game that's got it all in there. It's given you the options, it's given you the innovation, and I think they've done a great job with it. Lovely. I'll be playing this myself for a long time. I'm going to make a separate video on Fast Fusion, but just in short, stunning to look at, really nice speed and visuals. I find the game personally quite challenging. It is just very fast to keep up with. So it looks really nice. Again, much better with a Pro controller. I'll make a separate piece just looking at the Pro controller. And of course the backward compatibility. I'm going to look at the separate video on that, just going through driving games. But in the main, everything is better on the Switch 2. Some games are radically better. Some games are still a bit broken. Some games just simply have a little bit of better resolution, a stable frame rate. But either way, it's nice when developers also make that difference to upgrade and improve the game. Just makes all the difference. But even if they don't, there's a couple of cases here where games have just leapt up to 60 FPS from 30 or even a chugging 20, and it makes all the difference. So a look at racing games coming on a separate video. So all round, I'm loving my Switch 2 so far. I'm looking forward to the new Donkey Kong game, be playing that. In terms of controller, the Pro controller makes all the difference for playing and enjoying it. It's a bit small. It's not the best controller in the world. I wished it was just a little bit larger, but that's something I'll talk about more on the video, looking at that in more detail. And in terms of a handheld shape form, it's all pretty nice. Ergonomically, it's not the best on the hand. I think that they really could do with releasing a different set of Joy-Cons that are slightly thicker, slightly better for your hands. I find that sometimes button placement they've thought more about the two players playing than they have about the one player playing, and nothing seems to work sometimes in terms of button placement. So it can be a bit of a strain on the hands depending on the game that you're playing. And if you haven't played a game that's an action game that requires multiple button usage, you may never run into that problem. But if you do, you will find certain buttons can be an issue. Fingers can slip off the triggers, that sort of stuff very easily. So just needed a bit more to it other than that, and the lack of analog buttons really does affect driving games in general. I'll talk more about that in another video. But yeah, a very quick video just looking at Switch 2. Personally, I love it. I enjoy it for what it is. I like the way Nintendo have included a load of retro games on there. Been playing a bit of F-Zero, even though it's too sensitive compared to the real thing on the GameCube. But either way, I'll put a video together on some of this stuff as well. But yeah, I'd like to know your thoughts. What have you thought of your Switch 2 so far? What games are you playing? What games are you looking forward to? What games would you like to see remastered on this hardware? Do let me know. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon.